Okay, this is a little bit of extra help on finding the volume of composed figures. This was for lesson 5.6. Now, most of the volume questions that we have involve right rectangular prisms like this one. And we know that for a shape like this, we can either count the cubes in it or we can use the volume formula. Now, we have two volume formulas. The most basic one is volume equal length times width times height. And so I could find those dimensions on this shape and determine the volume. On this particular shape, I see that the length is 4, the width is 5, and then I count the height, and I can see it's 7. And so once I have those dimensions, I replace the letters in the formula to get my volume. I know that the length is 4, the width is 5, and the height is 7. And I'm going to use those three to find my volume. I'm going to multiply 4 times 5 and get 20, and then multiply 20 times 7. I know 2 times 7 is 14, and then annex my 0. So I know my volume is 140 cubic units. And I put cubic units because we're counting the actual cubes that it would take to fill up this figure. In some of the questions that you have, some of the length might be hidden, and so you're going to have to remember that when you're finding length, width, and height. For example, in this particular example, I want to count my length. I can see to here is 7, and then there's one more behind that, so I know the total length of that back edge is 8. So the length of this figure is 8. The width is 3, and then the height is 6. Okay, so if I'm going to find the volume of this figure, I know I'm going to have to multiply 8 times 3 times 6. And in this particular problem here, I can see that my answer choices have nothing that looks like 8 times 3 times 6. While these have those same numbers, they do not have the same operations. So I know that these are not possible choices. And so this is making us look at these two answer choices. Now, how in the world would they get a 24 times 6? Well, if you remember, another volume formula that we learned is that volume is equal to the base times the height. And we know when we multiply the length and the width that we get the base of the solid. So in this particular example, volume equals the base times the height would give us the total volume of this shape. And so I need to remember my second volume formula is volume is equal to base times height. So in a situation like this, this would be the answer. So those are our most common types of shapes that we have to find the volume for, using those two formulas. But on these composed figures, you do not have a right rectangular prism. And so this has to be broken into two right rectangular prisms before you can use that volume formula. And so the first step would be to break this into two right rectangular prisms and then determine the length, the width, and the height of each of these boxes. All right, so for my smaller box, I'm going to look for my length, and I can see that this has a length of 4 inches. Now you want to be careful because down here that says 9 inches, but that is the length of this edge for both the boxes combined. When I break it in two different boxes here, I can see that this length is going to be 4 inches. So I'm going to put a 4 for my length. I'm looking here, and I know this diagonal line here represents the width, which is 2. And then on this particular box, my height is 4. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 2 and get 8, and then 8 times 4, which is 32. And I'm going to write that amount of that volume inside of this box so that I don't forget it. Inches cubed, 32 inches cubed. Right, then I have to do the same thing for this side. I'm going to go ahead and write my volume formula so I know what 3 dimensions I'm looking for. I'm looking for the length of it. Well, I can see it's not this 9 inches because 4 of it's already been used, so that means the remaining part is 5 inches, which is also indicated up here on this edge. So my length is 5 inches. My width, again, is 2 inches. And then the height of this taller box is 7 inches. So on this side I have 5 times 2, which is 10 for the base, times 7, which is 70. So I know that the volume of this larger box is 70 inches cubed, or 70 cubic inches. I'm not done yet because now I have to take this box and combine the two to make the total volume. So I would add 70 plus 32 to come up with 102 inches cubed, or cubic inches. Okay, so that is the type of problem solving you're going to have to use for the problems in 5.6. On this particular problem, you're going to describe how you're going to find that volume by breaking these apart. Now remember, you cannot make a diagonal line here because then you're not breaking them into right rectangular prisms. You can make a vertical line, or you could make a horizontal line, and that would break them into right rectangular prisms. We did not learn how to do the volume by subtraction. We're just focusing on finding the volume of each cube or prism and then combining them with addition. All right, so let's take a look at this one. I can look at this and see I've got one edge down here. I know I'm going to need volume equals length times width times height. I'm looking at this shape and I can see that this bottom edge is 15 centimeters long, but that's too long for my box that I've shortened right here. I'm looking up at the top up here and I see that from the width of this is 5 centimeters. So I know if from here to here is 5 centimeters, this is also 5 centimeters, so from here to here would also be 5 centimeters. So I know this is no longer going to be 15. This side will be 5 centimeters. So that means that this side is going to be 10 centimeters. So I now know that the length of this smaller box is going to be 10 centimeters. The width, I can look right here and see that it's 5 centimeters on that diagonal line. And then the height is 8. So I'm going to multiply 10 times 5 and then times 8 and get my volume for this box. Then I need to do the same thing with this one. Volume equals length times width times height. I can see that the length of this box is 5 centimeters. The width, although it's not marked over here, I'm looking at this diagonal line, and it's the same as this width here, which was given as 5 centimeters. So I know this is 5 centimeters wide. And then the height is 20. So I'm going to have to multiply 5 times 20 to find the volume of this taller box. Once I have these two volumes, I'm going to add them together. Okay, so you're going to do that same sort of thing on each of these problems, including the ones on the back. Okay, I hope that helps, and I will see you in school soon. Bye-bye.